Well, hello there. Nice to see you. In this video, we're going to be learning about Tailwind CSS, what it is exactly, how to install it and get going with it, and how to use it to create modern-looking, nice, simple websites. But before we do any of that, let's actually read this paragraph because it's pretty cool. It sums up what Tailwind is. So Tailwind CSS is a highly customizable, going to come back to that, low-level CSS framework. Meaning low level basically is means that it gives you like fine-grained access to control all the elements that you see on your page and all their styling. Now the lowest level that you can do is writing your own CSS, but that takes longer than using like utility classes like we're gonna see in a bit. And that gives you all the building blocks that you need to build bespoke designs. So bespoke designs, custom themes that look like this is your theme. This is one complaint that you usually get when you use like a Bootstrap theme or just Bootstrap in general, is that it always kind of looks like you can tell that this is using Bootstrap. Even though I personally don't agree that much with it, I think you can customize Bootstrap like so much that you can make it look different. Also with Bootstrap 5 coming out soon, that's gonna be taken as well a utility approach, but that's a different topic for a different video. But Tailwind is basically made to be used and customized, so it's kind of like more customizable than Bootstrap in that regard. So without any annoying opinionated styles that you have to fight to override, this is an important one. So if you've used other frameworks like Bootstrap, Material Design and all of those, you'll find yourself sometimes if you want to override a style, you'll have to like target a specific selector under a specific other selector, and it kind of becomes like a pain to customize it to look the way you want it to look. In Tailwind, that's not the case. Every single class that you put and every single element that you style, you know exactly where those styles are coming from. You don't have some abstract name of a class that has a combination of other styles. So if we look at the example that they use here, you have this image, which is this profile rounded image right here, and it has H16 and Y16, which means like a height of 16 and a width of 16, which have a specific value in rem. And here you have MD-height 24, meaning on medium screens and up, it's gonna be even like larger in height and also in width, and so on. You see that it's using a combination of multiple classes to give the styling that you see here. And instead of just having like one name and then the styles are all written in CSS. So what's cool about this is that you can use all these combinations to create your own custom UI. Now you might be thinking this is like a lot of text in just, you know, like just this image tag. But what you will find is that this gives you more control, and also like you'll think by nature that, oh, you're going to be repeating this, but you're not. Most of the time, for example, if you have like, let's say this card right here, and you want to show multiple ones for multiple users, you're not actually going to create multiple cards. You're going to loop through an array and then say for each one of these, show this card. So generally when you're writing the markup, the HTML, the card, you're going to write it one time. So having to write all these classes is not actually a problem once you start to get going with Tailwind CSS. All right, so that's a bit of theory. We're going to like explain a bit more as we go, but let's actually get started with this library. Okay, so let's go to get started. And here it tells us to install Tailwind CSS with npm. So let's actually create a project first. So I'm gonna minimize this, and here on my desktop I'm gonna create a new folder. I'm gonna call it Tailwind. So let's open that with VS Code, and here I'm actually gonna create a new file, index.html, and here let's do exclamation mark tab, and I'll give it a title Tailwind project. And I'll open the terminal to install Tailwind CSS. So npm install Tailwind CSS, like so. And let's go back to Chrome. And here, so it tells us to create a CSS file and drop this in it. And this is like a special syntax to tell Tailwind to scaffold all of these elements. All right, that's installed. So here I'll create, let's call it an index.css. And here I'll paste those 3 lines. Ignore these squiggly lines, it's just VS Code doesn't recognize that. And now we need to actually, we're gonna skip this for now, the configuration, but we're gonna build the CSS file first. So that would be, yeah, that would be this line right here. So npx TailwindCSS build that file into this file. So I'm actually gonna take it and make it into an npm script. Just realized we don't have a package JSON, so we can say npm init. Actually, it's gonna ask me the question, so I'm just gonna hit enter to all of them. Forgot to add -y. Now here in the package JSON, I'm gonna remove this test script, and instead I'm gonna put a build script. I'm gonna paste that in, and this is gonna build index.css into, okay, I'll just leave it as output.css. So save. And now in the index.html, let's include that output CSS, even though it's not there yet. Well, actually, to make it there, we can just call that command. So let's say npm run build. There we go. So now it's built to this output CSS. And if you see, this has like so many different stylings. So all of the Tailwind is actually inside of here. So now we can include that output CSS. Up here, we'll say link, and this will come from output.css. Now, if we save, let's actually add something in the body so we can see. I'll just put a header 1 that says hello Tailwind. And I'm going to give it a class. And by the way, you can install this cool extension right here, TailwindCSS IntelliSense, which gives you like exactly that, like IntelliSense on all the classes that are in the Tailwind file that you have. And also it has some nice previews for all the colors, which is pretty cool. And also if you have the other extension, HTML CSS support, you can disable this while working with Tailwind. Otherwise, you're going to get those classes twice. All right, so here, if you do control space and you start typing, let's say text. Oh, actually, it's not included yet. So I'm going to save. Okay, whatever. Oh, here I'll say text for XL, which is a class that makes a text big. And now I'm going to start this with live server. And if you don't have live server, you can run npm install -g live server, or use the VS Code extension. I already have it installed, so I'm just going to say live server like so. And there we go. So we get hello Tailwind. I'm going to make sure that that was working, this text. Oh, there we go. It is actually working. So you see text for Excel actually is increasing the font size to 2.25 rem. And if I go ahead and say text dash, and you'll see all the other classes, I can say 6XL, which makes it even bigger. All right, so our Tailwind CSS is successfully linked. All right, so instead of just kind of like making a playground here and just showing you different elements, I decided let's actually build something, a website. And I want to build like a small copy of Kajabi's website. I think they have a really cool, like modern looking website. And I want to build like a small copy of this just to demonstrate to you how Tailwind works. So let's go back to the code. And I actually just remembered for the class, for the extension for Tailwind to work, we have to initialize a Tailwind config. And we can do that with, if you go back to the documentation, it's this thing right here. So create your Tailwind config file. So let's copy this command and let's go back to VS Code, and in the terminal, I'm actually going to exit out of that and paste that command and hit enter. And this will now create this tailwind.config.js command, the config file, which is a file that we're going to use to add certain things. For example, I can use it right now to change the theme. Sorry, not the theme, the font on the site. And I know that Kajabi uses a font called Inter. So if we go on Google Inter font, and we go to this fonts.google link, and I'm going to grab all the sizes because I want to have all of them for later if I want to use different ones. Of course, in production, you're going to check, and just leave the ones that you're using, but I'm going to select all of them for now. Let's go to embed, copy this link tag, and let's go back to the index.html and paste that here. And if we go back to Tailwind config, we can go to the theme, and here we can, there's a font family key, so we can change that. So say font family, and actually we can specify for different places. So here for the body, I'll specify inter like this, so as an array, and the first value is inter, and the second is the fallback, which will be sans serif, and I'm going to put a comma here. And for this to work, you need to actually build your Tailwind again for this to be included in the output file. So we need to run again npm run build for this configuration to change. And if you go to your output now and search for Inter, you see here .font body, we have font family Inter. So now we need to give this font body class to our body. So here in the body we'll say class font body. And now if we save and let's actually run live server again, let me close this. You'll see that actually the font has changed. Can't tell the difference that much between it and the other font, but it has actually changed. And there you go. So Enter right there. Let's start to create the nav bar at the top, like this one right here. So let's go back. Let's go back to VS Code. I'm gonna remove this header. Actually, I forgot to increase the font size. Let me close these. Close that. Let's remove this header one. And of course, navbars, it doesn't have its own like kind of classes and everything. We have to create it from the ground up, but that's not a problem. So here I'll create this navbar in its own section. So here I'll say section, and here we'll have a div, and this div will have a couple of classes. So I'll say bg white to give it a background of white, and say .py4 to give it some padding on the top and bottom. And by the way, if you're wondering how I know this, you can go back to the documentation. This one thing I like about Tailwind, they have amazing documentation. It's so easy to search. So if you just say padding, for example, and click there, you'll see all of the different classes that you can use to use padding. I'm using 4 to have padding of 1 rem on the top and bottom when you use py. Kind of very similar to Bootstrap if you used it in this one. So here we'll say py4, and also say that .border -t for top -6 to have like some border on the top, and I'll also say .border -blue -400. And if you hit tab, it will get this this div here. And for now, I'm just gonna add a link to it. So anchor with href of just hash. And here I'll actually make this about myself, for example, and I'll say classed like this and save. Let's go back. There we go. We get our link, but of course we get our navbar, but because the body has the same color, it doesn't actually stand out. So here in the body, I'm gonna give it a class of bg-gray -200 and save. Now if I go back, there we go. So now our body has a kind of like a gray background. Our navbar has a white background. Now let's put stuff in the navbar in a container so it's pushed to the middle. So if we go back, so here inside of our navbar, we can cut this and say .container and hit tab and paste that in. I want to add also like some links to the right, and I'll put them in their own div. So here I'll say div. I'll tell you why later I use this div to wrap them, but here I'll put a UL. So UL, and inside of it, let's say, so do like greater than li times, let's put 4 links. And here, let's do like the generic, actually, let's put an anchor tag inside of there as well. So here I'll say anchor tag with a link of hash, and this will point to home. I'm actually just gonna copy these, paste these 3 more times. And here we'll have blog, and we'll put about, and we'll put contact, just to have a couple of links. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, we need to put them next to each other. So let's, so this UL, we can add to it a class of flex to make this a display of flex. There we go, now they're next to each other. And we also need to put these 2 in a display of flex so that they're next to each other as well. So this container, we can here say flex, and now everything is next to each other. So let's style these LIs. So I'm going to click on this after this LI tag and hold Alt and click the same for the other 3 right there. And here I'll say class. Let's give these some padding. So we'll say padding 2. And we'll give it some margin as well on the right and left. So mx-4. Let's save. All right, that looks much better already. Now let's align these together, because this is kind of like going up just because it doesn't have a padding. So up here in the container, we can say items center, which will justify the items to the center, just like so. Actually, I just realized that the container, I forgot, because the container by default is not centered. So like you can see here, it's kind of like going to the left. So we can simply say MX auto to give it auto margin on the right and left. And now it's centered. And here we can say item centered and also justify dash between to put like a space between the navbar brand and these links on the right. All right, let's look at that other navbar. So the other navbar has the border on the top, which I added, but for some reason it's not working. Oh, so now that extension is working. Cool. We're getting those colors and we're gonna get to the suggestions as well. So maybe this border top doesn't exist. Let's do border dash T and see the suggestions. Oh, 6 doesn't exist. Okay, so I was using 6, but 6 doesn't exist because I think I edited the config before. So let's use 8 now. And let's look at that. There we go. We get this top border and it's blue. Let's use actually teal. I prefer the teal color. I'm going to use the 500 variant. All right, that looks much better in my opinion. So we're going to make it a bit like different and customize it a little bit. So what's next? Let's add this button. So let's go back and here under this last li, let's add a button. And let's give it a couple of classes actually. So here we'll give it a class of rounded to have some rounded corners. And we'll give it a class of text white to have exactly that. And I'll give it a class of font bold to have a bold font. And a class of bg-teal-500 to have that teal color in the background. I'll also give it some border, so border 1. And I'll give the some border color, so border-teal-500 to have the same color. And we're going to give it some padding, so px6 and some margin, sorry, not margin, padding on the top and bottom, so py, let's give it 3. And let's save. I know it's a lot of classes, but buttons require a lot of styles. All right, I forgot to put text inside of that button. So let's close it. And here, what does that button say? Start free trial. We can say start learning and save. All right, so it's very similar. I think except they're not using, okay, I'm gonna close this and this as well. I think they're not using font bold for their buttons. So I'm gonna remove that. So let's remove font bold. And yeah, that looks better. Feels like it's not aligned in the center as well. So let's go back. Because we're inside another div, so we can just add items center to this one. And save. And there we go. Now it's actually aligned. Cool. I want to as well change this text here to make it look like the text in this Kajabi. So basically this text is slightly bigger and is bold and has more spacing between the letters. So we can simply get that effect. I think we can use the leading classes. So let's look for leading. Let's look for letter spacing. Yeah, because it's leading, but it doesn't. Yeah, so we can use these tracking classes. So I'm going to use like the widest one. So tracking widest. So let's go back where we have that link, the class link, and let's say class equals, let's give it font bold, and let's give it text dash, let's give it 2XL. As you can see now, it's given us suggestions, which is pretty cool. So let's use 2XL, and let's give it tracking widest, and save. And now if we go back, there we go. That looks much better. And it's very similar to this, but let's give it some kind of, this is black, so it's kind of too aggressive. So I can just give it text dash gray, and there you go. You get like to even get a preview. So let's use gray 800 and save. That looks slightly better. Maybe let's use 700. Save. No, that's a bit too muted. So 800 was cool. All right, let's stick to 800. Okay, so now we can start to work on this landing section. And for this, I'm going to use this image. I'm going to have the links in the description to all the images that I'm going to use in this video. So I'm going to copy the image from off screen, and so this one right here, this 2 screens of like someone coding their desk. And I'm going to download this image. No, I'm not a robot. Don't think so, at least. And let's drag this image. paste it there. I'm just going to rename it to computer.jpg. Here, I'm going to create another section underneath this section that contains the navbar. So here I'll put another div. I'll give it a class of w-1/2. And what this means basically, so I want to create two divs. This one has half the width and this one has half the width. And you can see in the documentation, if you type on width, you can see all the different classes that you can use. So here you'll see the width, the static width ones. And also if you go here, you'll see the ones with the percentage. So half, or not this actually, 50% would be w-1/2. It's kind of like if you would be in Bootstrap, this will be like col-6. So yeah, let's go back here. So here dash, we already written that, so we can hit tab. Oh, actually, it doesn't play nice with Emmet sometimes, so I'm just gonna tab on this div like that, and then add class and paste that in. And this would have some text. So for now, I'm just gonna put a div and say hello world for now. This will just be a placeholder. And now I'm gonna add the other div that has the image. So I'll say div and say class equals w-1/2, and then inside of there I'm going to put an image tag, and this will have the source will be computer.jpg. Now let's save and let's see what that looks like. Cool, so that's taken half the width, but this they're actually not in flex, they're on top of each other. So let's go back, and actually I can give the section itself a class of flex, which should solve that problem. And there we go. So now the image is on the right and the text is on the left, and they both take half the width. All right, let's add some more text to match this. So what we have here, we have a heading with some text, and this is colored text, and then a paragraph and 2 buttons. So that's easy. Let's do that. I'm actually going to give this div some padding. So I'll say class p dash, let's give it 6. And I'm going to remove this text. And inside of here, we'll have a header 1. Now, of course, like all headers and paragraphs and everything, they're all normalized. They have the same size. So we need to use the classes themselves to change the size. This is just a semantic element. The header one doesn't change any styles. So here we'll say text dash 6XL, and I'll add font bold as well. And also I'll add a class called leading, and which kind of gives some spacing between the lines. Let's use 6 for now. And I'll close this, and this will say, what does that title say? You're serious about your online business. We are too. I'm gonna say you're serious about your coding skills. I am too. All right, let's see what that looks like. Okay, that looks horrible. That's too big, and also the spacing between the lines is too small. Let me check what leading class I wanted to use. So go to classes here. So say leading and tight. Yeah, leading tight is the best. And also text 6XL is too big. So let's try 5XL seems decent. And also this needs to be in a separate line. So what we're gonna do is, so you're serious, we get you're serious about, okay, so you're serious about should be in its own line, and then we're gonna add a line break here, and your coding skills, and then we're gonna add, actually I'm gonna put this in its own span, tab over, and say span, because this needs to be in a different color. So let's give it a class of text teal 500. And then put that text in, and here I'll add another line break. So break like that, and oh, I forgot to add the change the leading to leading tight and the text to 5XL. Let's save. All right, that looks okay. I think it's a bit too big still. That's okay. I'm okay for it. Doesn't have to be perfectly the same. So let's center this div in the middle. So we can simply use kind of like to align this self div. So here we'll say self center for it to align itself. And that's not working because this needs to be a flex as well. So change this to flex and save. All right, so now this is kind of centered in the middle. That's cool. Now let's add this text right here. So let's go back and here, let's say p for paragraph dot text, which I'm pretty sure it's paragraph, might be something else. All right, text dash lg, and I'll say dot leading relaxed to have like some space as well between the text. And also I'm gonna give it some margin on the bottom because I know later there's gonna be some buttons. And here inside of this text, I'm actually gonna take the time to write something that makes sense and not dummy text. If you want, you can just use lorem 40, for example, but I'm gonna write something. You can speed up the video, but I'm gonna write, like myself, you spend some time every day learning something new related to coding, be it a JavaScript library or even a new testing framework. Let's put a dot here. In short, don't want to make it too long, you're never stagnating or getting complacent. Instead, you're always moving forward. All right, that's enough. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, perfect. But I want to change like they did here, highlight a couple of words. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna highlight every day because that's very important for you to code every day. So here I'll just, I'll just give this a B tag for bold. And here let's have a closing tag. And also JavaScript library, because JavaScript libraries apparently are really important. So add that closing tag there. And also stagnating. I'm actually going to make this red. So surround this with a B, with a class of text red. Let's use 300. Otherwise it's going to take too much attention away. Here, close that. And then close this B. I'm going to remove this comma actually. And then moving forward is important. Let's make forward green. So class equals text green. Let's use this 500 and then close that and take that closing bold and save. All right, that looks much better, but let's use teal as well so it's consistent with that color. So here, teal 500. All right, save. Cool, that looks cool. Now let's give this this heading as well some margin on the bottom right here, MB6 as well, and save. Okay, so we're kind of getting there. We just need to add these two buttons. Now I realize these two buttons are the same, so we need to use this button, let's say, in so many other pages. We can extract this component. If you go to the Tailwind documentation and click on extracting, where is it? Yeah, extracting component, right here, components. You can see that, for example, they use the button example as well. If you're using this in so many places, you can simply have this right here. You can have this selector in your CSS and then apply all the styles from Tailwind that you want to apply to it. So we can extract that. So let's go to that button, take all of these classes up to here, cut them. Let's call this, let's say BTN, and then let's go to our, not the config, not the output, sorry, the index CSS. And here we'll say .btn, and then say apply, and then paste all of those styles and save. I think this red line doesn't mean anything. So now we need to build. So I'm going to open a new terminal and say npm run build. All right, there's an error. Oh, border one cannot be found. Okay. Oh yeah, border one doesn't actually exist. It's the default is just border. So let's save. And now let's try to build again. Okay, cool. That's successful. So now So this now should give those styles. So if we go back and refresh, nothing should change. And it doesn't indeed. Cool. And if you click on this, you see it has only BTN, and that BTN has all those styles applied. So that's nice. Now we just need to use BTN if we want to use that button again. And we do. So here under this paragraph, I'm going to add another div, and this will have two buttons. So the first button, have a class of BTN, and it will say start learning, kind of like the same in the navbar. And let's repeat it one more time. As you see in the Kajabi, they have this watch video button, which is like an outline, like hollow button. So we can create this as well. So let's create this in a different one, and we'll say, for example, btn-hollow. And if we go here and we copy this one more time and say instead btn-hollow. And what I want to change in this one is the text color will be text teal 500, and the background will be BG transparent. And that should do the trick. So let's save. And now we used hollow there. Now we need to rebuild. So we run npm run build again. All right, that's built, save. And now if we go back to our app, boom, we get a transparent background button. Let's put some margin between them. So here we can still add some more classes to this. Let's say not bottom, margin right. So mr-4. Cool, we have the margin. And we can also, by the way, create the hover effects like this. What you can see, you can go to the documentation and say hover. You'll see for like hover and focus and stuff like that, you can use this syntax where you say hover colon and then whatever styling that you want to apply to it. What we want to apply here is when we hover over it, now it has the a background of the same color. So here it's going to have a background of teal, and this should become slightly darker when we hover over it. So we can both say inside of here, hover and then add whatever. But because we already extracted this into its own component, it makes more sense to do that here. Now we can't use the hover blah 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 classes modifiers inside of here, and we can say .btn and do colon hover like traditional CSS, and then apply all the other styles. I think it makes more sense like this. So here, what we need to apply to the button when we hover over it. So this is the regular one. It needs to be darker, so we'll say apply bg-teal-700, and of course we need to change the border as well. So border-teal-700. Add semicolon, and now let's build again. npm run build. All right, so that's built. Now let's look at that. Cool. So when we hover over it, it becomes darker. Now it's like snappy. It's changing instantly, but we'll fix that. Let's fix this other button. So I can simply say here .btn-hollow colon hover. Here we'll say apply, add apply bg-teal-500. And now the text needs to be white as well for us to be able to read it. So we'll say text-white. And also actually, oh no, the border stays the same color, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's build again. Now let's go back. And now if we hover over this, it's changing color, and this as well. That's cool. So to get the transition to slowly happen, there's as well this other helper. I think it's transition. Actually, I misspelled it. So transition, yeah, transition property. And yeah, so if you say transition, now it's actually gonna use the transition property, and then you need to add to it, for example, here duration. They have duration 500. And this is in milliseconds, so you can add other durations. I'm going to add duration 100. So I'm going to copy this up to here, up to this dash. Let's go back. And I'm going to add it to both the buttons. So here I'll click here. Oop, I'll click here. And then I'll Alt and click here. And paste that. And say duration 100. And I'm actually going to add a style of like the transition, which will be ease in, out, like that. And save. And now if we build again and go back to our app, now you see that it's actually transitioning slowly and not suddenly changing the color. Cool. So now actually I want to add this section here with this title. Of course, not with this animation, but let's add as well that title and these 3 testimonials. So that's easy. Now let's go back to our index HTML. Underneath this section, let's add another one. Say section. And inside of here, we'll have a div with a class of container, and also with a class of MX auto to center it. And inside of here, we'll have 3 different divs. But actually, let's put the title first. So I'll say p.textCenter to center it, .text 5XL to make it big, and also give it some margin. So let's say MB-8. And by the way, you can go back to the documentation, and if you go, for example, to margin, you can see, actually not transition, margin, to see like how that is. It's I think, yeah, always incrementing by 0.25 rem between each one digit. And you can also like customize these. For example, you see here there's no margin 7. Let's say if you really wanted M-7 to have 1.75 rem, and which doesn't exist by default, you can go to the configuration here, and there are 2 things here. There's the theme, where you're inside of the theme. If you add a property, you'll have exactly the same of that. But if you go to extend, you can extend the existing ones. So an example of this, margin in the configuration. So if you scroll, you'll see, there you go. So inside of the theme, you'll see there is this margin key, and you can add different kind of names and then the values that they have. So we can extend the existing one. So if we say here margin, and then we open an object, and here we'll say 7, and we'll give it a value of 1.75 rem, and save. And of course we need to build again. And now if we go back to our app, refresh, and now, for example, if I go to this button, go to classes to add, and say m dash, for some reason it doesn't show on this list. Maybe I don't see it. Right, so now that I refreshed and I reopen the DevTools, you'll see that 7 is right there. So if I click M-7 and add it, it actually adds 1.75 rem. So now we've successfully extended our CSS and added like a new value for margin. So that's one thing that's cool about Tailwind CSS. You can add so much more if you wanted to customize it to your liking. Okay, so let's go back and add the testimonial section. Go back to our index CSS. So here, let's just tab this, and inside of this, we'll have some text that says your skills after class, I guess. And then after this, let's add a div of a class of flex. And here we'll have our 3 different testimonials, and they will all be take a third of the width. So this will be actually, let's create a div and then add a class to it, because otherwise that class name will not trigger emit properly. So here we'll say w-1/3, and then here I'll say flex. I'll also add some margin on the top and bottom. I'll show you why later I did. And inside of here we'll have an image, and because what we need to recreate is this this style right here, where there is this rounded image, and then next to it there's this testimonial. So I'm gonna grab these images. I'm actually gonna paste these links now. So the first one will be this image of this girl right here, and also there's another image. So this one of this guy. Oh, I don't know why he's in the rain, topless. That's crazy. And then this guy right here with a beard. Okay, so let's download all of these 3. Gonna download the smallest versions of them. All right, so that's the girl image. Gonna rename it to just girl, and then this guy as well, download his image, and then drag it, just gonna rename it to man, and then this other one, download it, drag it, and I'll just name this man-2, close them. And here, the first one, let's use the girl one. So girl dash, not dash, dot JPEG. So I want to make it rounded. So let's add a class of rounded. And also let's give it some fixed width and height. So height, H dash, I'll use 16. Also width dash 16. This is kind of similar to the example that they use in the homepage, Tailwind does. All right, let's look at what that looks like. Oh, actually, this only gives it like rounded corners. I want to give it, I think it's rounded dash, rounded dash full, I think. Yeah, okay. So now it's actually rounded, but it's kind of smushed. So I'm gonna add some inline styling here because I don't think there's a class that exists for this style. So I'll say style, object, fit, cover. And so now it actually doesn't smush it. Cool. All right, that looks cool. So next to it, we're gonna add a testimonial. So next to it, we'll have a div, and this will be rounded, and this will have a BG white to have a white background. And also I give it some padding so our text is not on the edges. So P-4, and then I'll give it some margin on the right. So MR-10. Here we'll have 2 paragraphs or 2 pieces of text. The first one is let's give it text-SM to make it small. And also some margin on the bottom, so MB-4. And this will be the name. And let's say this is Jane Doe. And we just put Jane-D, and underneath here will be the actual testimonial on what she benefited from class, I guess. So I'll say class, what does she say? Okay, has taught me the best way to center a div. All right, so let's save. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, that looks cool, but let's put some margin between the image and the testimonial. So here in the image, let's say MR- how much? 3. I think 3 is enough. All right, that looks much better. It's really important to learn how to center a div. So let's copy this entire div and paste it 2 more times. Boom, boom. And then the second one, okay, so you got the first one. The second one will be this man, and then he will be John Doe, I guess. So John-D, and he'll have a different testimonial. What is he gonna say? Okay, 2 days after watching class videos, and now I can fly and be invisible. Okay, I can't type invisible. All right, so we're gonna have another one, and this one will be man-2, and this testimonial will say, thanks to class, now I can code with one hand and beat someone at chess with the other, and do all of this with my eyes closed. I know I'm getting silly with it, guys, but you can write whatever you want, but I just wanted to have these pieces of text. All right, cool. So we have 3 testimonials with decent spacing between them. Let's add some padding for this section so that not everything is pushed to the bottom. So up here, this section itself, I'm actually gonna give it as well some background color so that it stands out from this. Just like here, you'll see they're different. So let's go back. So we'll have a class of BG. Give it blue. Let's give it 300, and padding Y of let's give it 12, and let's see. Oh, that's too blue. Let's do only 100. All right, so that looks much better. So this looks cool, but this section, I think we should give it some fixed width. Otherwise, it's kind of like overflowing like that. We can use, so right here, we can use a set of utilities called max-w for width. And I'm just going to give it LG, so max W large. All right, that looks better, but the text is kind of like going back to the line quickly, so I'll use XL. All right, that looks much better. Let's actually center it. So we can simply, this flex wrapping div, we can add to it justify center and save. All right, that looks much better. It's actually now almost identical with the Kajabi one. So that's cool. Now, one thing though, if you go to kind of like smaller screens, this starts to become really janky. What we can do is, the padding is cool, but what we can do, actually we can make it similar to this. What does this do? Oh, okay, they just get rid of this image on small screens, or like actually from large screens and down, on medium screens and down. So what we can do, what is it actually? Is it display none? All right, let's look at maybe hide. Use, no, not visibility. Actually, I want display none. Display. Oh, it's actually hidden. So hidden gives it display none. So what we want to do is it needs to be hidden on small, on medium screens and down. So it actually works the other way around. The Tailwind CSS is mobile first. So you actually put what's mobile and then from a size and up what you want the effect to be. So for that image, which is right here, this div that wraps it, we're going to say that by default, it's actually hidden, but from large screens, so LG colon, now we can say block, which is which gives it display of block. And this other div needs to be like full width when the other image is hidden. Here we can say by default, it has a width of full, so W-full. And this, you see now it already underlines this. Other one is telling you can't have two different widths on the same kind of like by default. So we can just add LG to this. So on large screens and up, you're going to have half of the width. All right. So now if we make this smaller, cool, that image just disappears in medium screens and down. And now we get this takes the full width and it looks kind of very similar to what this site, to the Kajabi site, looks like on small screens. And let's do the same for these testimonials because they look very, very interesting. So let's go back and down here in the testimonials, let's actually click, select this, the same classes for all these three and Control D twice. And now go back to the start. So this now by default will have a width of full, so we're W-full. And from large screens, so LG colon, it's gonna actually have a third of the width. So let's save. Let's look at that. It's actually not working. Okay, I know why it's not working because this is it's in a flex div, but this needs to add to be able to wrap. So we can simply not actually wrap like a wrapper, but wrap around. So here we'll say flex dash wrap, and that should fix the problem. Cool, and it actually does. Now we get them kind of like take the full width, and as the screen becomes bigger, they actually take a third of the width, as you can see. All right, nice. So I'm not gonna get too much into like how to make the site responsive because that takes a little bit of time. You can, I think I've like shown you enough of the ropes on how to use Tailwind. I'm sure you can go and put in some more time and become like an absolute master of this super awesome library. Actually, I'm gonna be making more stuff on the channel with Tailwind, so look forward to that. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something about Tailwind. I hope you're gonna use it, and yeah, please do drop a like. It helps a lot, and I do really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.